Going to start our breakdown of all 32 teams in the NFL. We're starting in the AFC North with Nick Mizesko's squad. It's the Cleveland Browns. Let's do it. And I tell you what, Nick, this is going to be a bit painful for you because let's talk about last year because
let's
I'm
not.
telling you,
okay, let's not, Scott. Thanks, man.
Well,
Appreciate
you know, when I was sitting down here as the non-Cleveland fan, I was like, I was looking at the schedule and I was like, well, they start off, they lose a game to the Chiefs, no big deal, but all of a sudden they pretty much played like 500 football, really all the way through November. And then you had the bye week. You're, 6-6 going to the bye week. You beat the Ravens, and then Raiders, Packers, Steelers, Bengals, all in a row. Kind of knocked the Browns out of an opportunity to maybe make the playoff run or even win the division.
Yeah, it was a weird season for the Browns, Scott. It was one that coming in, especially with how the 2020 season ended with so much hype around getting their first playoff win as a franchise since they returned to Cleveland, taking down the Steelers. There's a lot of hope, and it was certainly a promising start to the year. It also helps when you play the Texans game 2. That's always just a great way to start the season. But then after that, you look at the schedule. It was a lot of yo-yoing. It was wins and losses back to back. There were a lot of what I like to call the participation trophy wins, the losses. I mean, in the sense of they only lost the Chiefs by 3 in the opening game, and I think that was better than people expected. The Chargers, who were such a good team last year, that was a back and forth game. They ended up only losing by 5. But last season, the story of the season was Baker Mayfield. It was that torn labrum he suffered early in the season, and bless Baker and his toughness. He wanted to keep playing. Kevin Stefanski said, "You got it, dog. You say you're good enough to play. You can." And it ended up hurting the Browns. He was a wildly inaccurate quarterback with that shoulder. Even though it was the off shoulder, he still had that harness on him. He still wasn't releasing through throws. They also had, again, injuries were wild last year. Denzel Ward missed 6 games. Nick Chubb missed 6 games. Kareem Hunt missed 8, I believe. This was a team that just was never fully healthy. The other story, of course, Odell Beckham, middle of the year, going to the Rams, never meshed with Baker Mayfield. Odell Beckham's dad, not a big Baker Mayfield fan, probably doesn't own a jersey. So Scott, it was a year that started off with a lot of hope, but so much internal drama, add in the injuries, add in a relatively tough schedule. It was a schedule that I think at the end of the year was 3rd or 4th toughest in the NFL. And what you end up with is an 8-9 season where, to me as a Browns fan, it felt like a 6-10 season, something like that. But they were only 8-9. They weren't that far from making the playoffs. But boy, oh boy, I don't want to relive that anymore. That was rough.
How you feeling about the coaching staff? Because they're a long way from Mr. Brown, one of the winningest coaches ever. Only lost 48 games, by the way, as a Browns head coach. They were pretty good back in the day. They had some good players. A lot of players that awards are named after nowadays. That's how good they were back in the day. But how do you feel about this coaching staff? Because they certainly have a lot of potential and a lot of pedigree where they come from.
This is a coaching staff that I think gets a little bit of a artificial boost because you look at who the Browns have had as their head coaches. Freddie Kitchens, Hugh Jackson, Romeo Crennel, Butch Davis, just to name a couple. Eric Mangini.
Yeah, sure.
They haven't exactly had the best head coaches ever. And so because of that, having a stable head coach that sticks around for a while is nice. I'll say this. I'm a big fan of Alex Van Pelt. This is somebody who really changed Baker Mayfield's mechanics in 2020. He was their quarterback's coach. And Baker Mayfield, for all the flack that he gets, in 2020 was a top 10 quarterback statistically. He threw 33 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He was a very good quarterback in 20. Labrum injury in 21, he takes a big dip in his stats. Kevin Stefanski, Scott, I have no idea how to feel about Stefanski.
Yeah.
I want him to be good because I think the system of offense that he runs fits the Browns. He wants to run 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, hand the ball to Nick Chubb, use Kareem Hunt.
Who had a great? Chubb had a great season, and you talk about injuries. You got to throw Hunt in there as well, and Jarvis Landry, etc. But Chubb had a tremendous season, And if I'm sure he's going to be very high on people's fantasy boards this year, just based on what you just talked about, which is the coaching staff really want to ground and pound.
Yeah, they do. My biggest complaint about Stefanski, and I don't know if it was a change in play calling in 21 or if it was just this is what happens when you have a quarterback that is partially injured. They went away from a lot of the play action passing that was Baker Mayfield was so comfortable in that system. And so because of that, I didn't love the play calling end of the year from Stefanski himself. I thought we went to way too many 5 wide sets looking for baby in routes and little hitch routes. But at the end of the day, I think Stefanski is a good dude. This offseason, though, didn't exactly, as a Browns fan, warm me up to either the GMs or the coaches as to how they have handled this entire offseason.
Well, they were so close. I mean, we go back to just that last little run they had, Raiders, Packers, Steelers, Bengals, which, I really didn't feel like they won the games I thought they should have won, which was good. You can argue maybe they should have played better against the Ravens, stuff like that. But when they came up against inferior opponents, I thought they actually took care of business, but just couldn't overcome Raiders, Packers, Steelers. And the crazy thing is, I mean, you beat the Bengals, who were the AFC champs. Beat them twice, who ended up winning the division at 10 games. So just a few games off from winning the division, which a lot of Browns fans, are thinking, man, we were a long way away from winning the division, and you could almost taste it. You could see it out on the horizon. They had an opportunity. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about this year's season coming up, and I think the first thing we need to just address right off the bat is you got a quarterback situation. You got a disenfranchised Baker Mayfield, because you roll the dice on Deshaun Watson, and I get it, he's going to play somewhere at some time. Is it going to be this year? Probably going to be next year. If anything this year, maybe half a season. He is a franchise quarterback. There's no question about it. Let's just stick to the on-field, that what we've seen from Deshaun Watson in his career, playing for a terrible Texans team. This Cleveland Browns line, which is not like, a Super Bowl winning offensive line, but still, it would probably be one of the best lines that Deshaun Watson ever played for in his history. What's your thoughts at quarterback? I know off the field we are really holding our tongue on what we believe happened and all that kind of stuff, but on the field, just looking at the X's and O's, he's a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as a quarterback, he is, when he was playing, a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the league. Yep. This was in a bad team with not a whole lot of weapons. I mean, again, he had DeAndre Hopkins, but just not a great team around him. On the field, this is a very good quarterback. And so because of that, depending on how much he plays, at any point that he steps on the field, without a doubt, he's the best quarterback the Cleveland Browns have had since they've returned to Cleveland since 2001. I mean, there's not a single quarterback they've had that's better.
Where do you even start to put quarterbacks in the Cleveland Browns? He's got to be a top 2, top 3 quarterback that you've ever had in the history of the franchise. Otto Graham, Bernie Kosar. I mean, who else you want to throw out there?
Those are the other two. I mean, that is Otto Graham, Bernie Kosar, Deshaun Watson. In terms of pure talent, like that is the best. Now, again, an important thing to remember: we have not seen Deshaun Watson play football in 2 years. Like, he has not touched a field, read a defense, done anything, and that's a lot of time to be away from the game, especially at a quarterback position, which is we've seen quarterbacks leave and come back and have injuries and come back. They're never quite the same. There's some level of rhythm that has to be with a quarterback, but they took their shot to get Deshaun Watson. They got him. Mission accomplished.
Someone was going to, you've said this before, somebody was going to get him, right? Yeah. I mean, he was going somewhere, and heaven forbid he went to Pittsburgh as a Browns fan, which could have been a possibility, or somewhere else in the AFC. So that was an extreme possibility of happening. So let's say that I think, the best way to look at this team going forward is Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starting quarterback on day one. Is that your feeling? Or is Baker anywhere in the equation?
This is where I don't know. I don't understand what the Browns front office is doing. Everything we have heard is that, for example, the Carolina Panthers wanted the Browns to retain somewhere between $10 to $12 million of his salary this year, and the Browns are not budging. They want the other team to take on the entirety of the salary. That tells me they don't want to deal him that much. Now, you get into the question of, well, if they don't deal him, what does Baker Mayfield do? Does he play for the Browns, knowing that, again, I am under the assumption, and every report I've heard is we are looking somewhere around an 8-game suspension for Watson. I don't think they have not given any indication it's going to be a full year. I don't think it's going to be less than that. If you're
Even
Baker, do you come back for 8 games?
Whatever the length is, I'm sure they're going to try to get it shortened too. So even if it's a year, 10 games, 8 games, I mean, it's going to be arbitrated into something that's, 6 to 8 games, I think, is probably what you're looking at with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Sorry, Calvin Ridley. But at the end of the day, I don't know what Baker does at that point. I have been of the assumption that Baker Mayfield will not play for this team again. I think there's no benefit to him doing it. I think he wants to sit there and be on another team. He has been disrespected by the moves of the front office and the coaches. I don't think he's going to play, which would tell me that Jacoby Brissett is going to start the top 8 games unless, I don't know, Josh Dobbs suddenly became a good quarterback.
No.
It's going to be Jacoby Brissett.
No. So even if Baker Mayfield is on the payroll, there's no way. I mean, he'll suit up, I assume. I mean, it's such a weird situation, right? Because it's almost an unprecedented. I can't even remember a situation where, you have a guy that's playing and you're trying to just deal him. Like, and he's the best. If Deshaun can't go, he's the best quarterback in that quarterback room, right?
I mean, I continue to say I think Baker Mayfield, when healthy, Baker Mayfield is a top 15 quarterback. He is a top half of the league, better than the bottom half guy. I don't think he's much better than that, but that's what he is. I think the only way Baker Mayfield plays for this team is if it comes down to Deshaun Watson is suspended for the year. I think if it's a year, Baker Mayfield goes, okay, I'm going to play out the final year of my contract. I'm going to make my $18 million, and then I'm gone in free agency. I like this team enough. It is better for me to play for a year than not play for a year. I just don't think the half and half works for him. I don't think
number 1 pick, and not that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, 2018. But we just ranked the quarterbacks last podcast, and we said he was at mediocrity, right? Like he's somewhere in like 15 to 20, right, of the 32 quarterbacks.
And again, I don't think it's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Yeah. I mean, there are only so many quarterback spots in the league, and there are a lot of teams out there who would kill for a 15 to 20 quarterback. How y'all doing, everybody that we put in the garbage category?
Yeah, that's right. All right, so I just want to set that stage when we get to the roster and we play the win-loss game. When we look at their upcoming 2022 schedule that was released a couple weeks ago. And this is kind of what we're going to be doing for all 32 teams. We're starting here in the AFC North a little bit because, Nick's a Browns guy. He's got extensive knowledge on the team. He's followed them for good and bad.
Bad. It's mostly bad, Scott. It's bad.
It is mostly bad. So we set the table there. We assume Deshaun Watson's going to be there for the back half of the season. Somewhere around in there. He's going to play somewhere between 6 and 10 games. Of the 17 games. Let's shift gears and look at the rookies, right? The draft class. First of all, what did you think of the Cleveland Browns 2022 draft?
Insanely frustrating. But I think the talent that they got is fine. This is a team that already went in without a first-round pick as it was traded to the Texans. They trade out of the second round on day 2 of the draft. They end up with 7 draft picks. You end up getting some players who I think will contribute, but at the end of the day, like this is a team that, listen, Martin Emerson, I think they're big on at cornerback. This was a big reason why they ended up
getting to Mississippi State.
Yeah, and they ended up trading Troy Hill, who was the guy they brought in just a couple years ago from the Rams. They sent him back to the Rams. They said, thank you for letting us borrow him. You can have him back.
He was on loan. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, you've got some interesting pieces. They're big on David Bell out of Purdue. I like David Bell a lot, but he is not an athletically imposing figure. He runs the slowest 40.
He's not Jarvis Landry, I can tell you that.
No, but Scott, let's be clear. This team was built, this offseason was not a draft-based offseason. This was a free agency offseason. Their biggest things, they bring back Jadeveon Clowney, which was a major signing just a couple days ago, bringing back Clowney. They're still in talks, by the way, to bring in Ndamukong Suh. They're the leader in the clubhouse to bring him back. And they also go out and they get Amari Cooper for pennies on the dollar. 5th and 6th round for Amari Cooper.
I really like that pickup.
I love that pickup for them. They also underrated pickup. They did a 1-for-1 swap. They sent Mack Wilson, linebacker, to the Patriots. They bring in Chase Winovich, who's a Michigan player, so I'm super excited about that. But he's a defensive end that's going to rotate in on that edge. He's going to play for probably going to sub in for Myles Garrett when he's off the field. This was a team that was built in the offseason. Deshaun Watson,
they have potential
Cooper.
to have a really formidable defensive line. And I think for what the Rams have shown, like, you can really cause problems with a good defense. And if you look at their draft picks, I mean, the first two, cornerback, they got defensive end, Alex Wright, Alabama Birmingham, who's really athletic. Perrion Winfrey from Oklahoma. He's a plugger. You know what I mean? I don't love Cade York in the 4th round, the kicker. But this is a team that, if you're thinking about, okay, defense, running the ball, we're probably going to kick. We're going to kick, you know. And I felt at LSU, I mean, he was a strong kicker, you know, and you always wonder about kickers, how that's going to translate to the next game, to the next level. A lot of, 3 Oklahoma guys, throw Michael Woods and Isaiah Thomas in there as well, who I thought was more of a basketball player, but hey, apparently he's a great defensive end as well. So a lot of D-line pickup, in this draft, and that kind of tells me what the coaching staff is thinking with this draft. We're going to run the ball. We're going to try to stop the run. We're going to try to make teams one-dimensional. They want to throw the ball anyway. Everybody in the league wants to throw the ball anyway. But when people throw the ball, you get a higher chance to, force turnovers and things like that. So I thought, for what they gave away, they got Deshaun Watson. I thought the draft was decent. Like, it wasn't like A+ or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was a B+ kind of draft based on the picks they had.
Yeah, and the interesting part for me as a fan looking forward is going to be, what's that cap situation going to be? Because let's not forget, they gave Denzel Ward the highest per year contract of any cornerback in the NFL. They just paid David Njoku $12 million a year, making him a top 3 paid tight end in the league. They've got the Deshaun Watson contract, which is fully guaranteed. They just brought back Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, you do look at, they spent a lot in this offseason. This was a team that had $60 million in cap room, so they had some room to do it. But you do wonder, especially as we get towards the season, in the first couple of weeks where probably Baker Mayfield's not going to be playing, you do wonder if suddenly there's a desperation to move him for pennies on the dollar, because he's counting $18 million against that cap, and they're going to need to move him. They want him off the books, and he doesn't want to be there. So you wonder if you get a team in those first 4 weeks that has a bad quarterback injury, or realizes they're starting a guy named Kenny Pickett who's not very good. Do they trade Baker Mayfield to him? Probably not Pittsburgh, but hey, there are lots of teams realizing that Drew Lock maybe isn't the tall white Jesus that they think he is. I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of places that he can go early in the year.
Yeah. Injuries, poor performances, things like that. Let's go through the depth chart here. We talked about the quarterbacks. We believe Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter for the first 6 to 10 games. You got Deshaun Watson, still got Baker Mayfield in there. Who knows? I mean, if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt, and you got, if you're bringing Josh Dobbs in, it's just L's, complete L's. If he has to play one bit of a start this year, Josh Dobbs is not going to be a good thing. How do you feel about the running backs? They got Chubb, they got Hunt, and they also brought in Jerome Ford from Cincinnati, who I thought had a pretty nice season last year in college.
Baffling pick with Jerome Ford, because they also have Dearness Johnson, who filled in for both Chubb and Hunt, put up a 100-yard game on Thursday Night Football against the Broncos, a top defense. In my estimation,
they have too many running backs.
As a Browns fan and a football fan, this is the best running back room in the league. They have 3 guys that can be starters on any team. That's how good this room is. I just don't know what you do with all of them.
Maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction of, hey, if one of these guys get hurt, who are we rolling with here? But right now you got six running backs puts a lot of load on the roster.
Yeah, tons. I mean, again, and especially a team that puts a lot of load. I mean, this is the Dalvin Cook problem. Dalvin Cook is a fantastic running back. The Vikings want to run him 35 times a game. He gets hurt. Like, that's He's not one of these running backs that gets 20 touches. It's the fear of Derrick Henry. What happens when Derrick Henry goes down? Because he's touched the ball 35 times a game.
Let's jump over to wide receiver. You talked about picking up Amari Cooper, which was huge. Who else do you like in this wide receiver core? I mean, we touched a little bit on David Bell, the rookie coming in. Who's wide receiver number 2, number 3 on this team?
I mean, my assumption is it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. He played number 2 most of last year. Yep. It's DPJ.
It's just in his third season.
Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn is a burner. It's somebody who, true, very young. Anthony Schwartz is a guy that I think they were hoping to develop a little more. He just didn't quite get there, especially with Baker Mayfield. But I assume the 3 is going to be DPJ.
All right, what about tight ends? Because you talked about it. 2 tight end system, running the football, mixture of good blocking tight ends and receiving tight ends.
Yeah.
Who jumps off your list there of who's going to be one of the main targets?
I mean, it's going to be David Njoku. You just paid $12 million for him.
Yep.
You brought him back. This is a guy that I know a lot of people look at his stats and they go, why did they pay so much money for him? This is somebody who hasn't done a lot. Well, one thing to remember is this is a team that has run 3 tight ends pretty consistently.
Yep.
Last year, it was him. It was Austin Hooper was the number 1 who's now gone. And then they brought in big loss for them. And they brought in the rookie out of FAU in Harrison Bryant. I think it's going to be the Njoku show. This is a guy who's shown market improvement in the last 2 years, especially when you have a guy like Jacoby Brissett under center who's going to rely on dump offs to tight ends. He's a big target, big frame with great hands. He's not going to blow you away. He's not the best route runner at tight end, but he makes tough catches. And I think that's what they like about him. It's going to be Njoku. Harrison Bryant is that number 2 tight end. He is just a straight up burner at the tight end position. I mean, he's somebody who is very fast and creates a lot of mismatch problems. His biggest weakness, though, he does have butterfingers. That's the word you're looking for. Yeah. He drops so many passes.
How you feeling about this offensive line? You got a good mix of veterans and maybe some high rookie potentials.
Yeah, I mean, obviously led by Joel Bitonio, still there. Led by Jack Conklin, hopefully coming back from the dislocated elbow that took him out the last 4 games last year, which was a big loss for the Browns going through that murderer's row, not having your left tackle. They do lose J.C. Treader in the offseason. That is a loss for them, but they have a feeling that somebody like Blake Hance can fill in for them. This offensive line is, in my opinion, assuming they fill that gap where J.C. Treader is, it's a top 7 unit in the league. This is a very good offensive line, and they have Joel Bitonio, who's a top 3 guard, and they have Jack Conklin, who, when healthy, is the number 1 tackle in the league. He is as good as it gets. I think he is better than a guy like Trent Williams. He is the best tackle in the league.
Money Boy, good to see you in chat. Great one. Glad you guys are here. You're watching the Scott Cole, Nick Mizesko show. We are live here every Tuesday. You can find us out on the interwebs as far as the audio podcast goes. That's where a lot of people listen to us. But you can come and join us anywhere on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the places on the interwebs.
What's up, LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn's still chilling with us, and we love it. Defensive line, this is where they really shine when we get on the other side of the football.
Tasty. I mean, I love it. I love that this AFC North has both Myles Garrett and TJ Watt in it. They are the 2 best defensive ends in the league. You bring back Jadeveon Clowney, who, for a guy coming in last year when they were signed by the Browns, everyone, this guy's overrated. He was a number 1 pick, but all he does is stop the run. Yep. He had 9 sacks last year. Like, this was a guy who was very good on the opposite side of Myles Garrett. They bring in Chase Winovich, as we mentioned, from the Patriots. D-tackle, a little bit of a question mark. They had Malik McDowell last year. They had Mac Wilson last year. They're really counting on Tommy Togiai this year. That's what Kevin Stefanski has said. Tommy Togiai, who was drafted out of Ohio State a year ago. They're probably going to bring somebody else in. Ndamukong Suh is the name that I have heard a lot of. But either way, when you've got Clowney on one side, Garrett on the other, I mean, you're thrilled. You're getting after the quarterback a lot.
Yeah, 4-3 defense. We'll see again this year. They mix it. They do get kind of exotic at times. Linebacking, in my opinion, might be the big question mark for this Browns team. They're going to need some guys to really step up. Not many huge household names there at linebacker.
Yeah, so I was licking my fingers at the defensive line, linebackers. I'm passing the plate away going, I'm good. I'll have one serving.
Carrots?
Listen, they bring,
I'll pass.
yeah. What are they? This is spinach. Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
They bring back Anthony Walker, who they signed from the Colts. I was underwhelmed with what Anthony Walker did last year. He was dinged up a little bit. They also, Sione Takitaki is somebody who gets a lot of play for them. Just not the biggest Takitaki fan. Don't like the chips. Not a big fan of him. The player who I am a big fan for, who showed a lot last year in his first year, was Jlk Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. Big athletic outside linebacker. He made some major plays, especially late in the year for the Browns. He's somebody I think can become that defensive leader, that linebacker that can lead that team for years. I think he's somebody who can even move over to middle linebacker if he so chooses and learns that system. He's the guy who I'm excited for. The rest of the linebacking core. What's up, guys? You're back?
And the crazy
really?
thing is
Okay.
you were in a draft that had some decent linebacking choices.
Yeah.
And a lot of them went in those first 2 rounds. I get it, right? A lot of the Georgia, Alabama guys were gone by that point. But that's the biggest question mark. Now I love the defensive backs. I like the safeties as well. I don't think that's going to be what's hurting you. I just think it's all that intermediate game. What do you think of the secondary here for the Browns?
I mean, again, obviously thrilled to see Denzel Ward get his contract. He has been a PFF top 5 corner. That's how good he has been. Greg Newsome, second year in the system. Very excited to see how he goes. Interested to see who that third cornerback is. Whether Greedy Williams is healthy, had that nerve problem in his shoulder that's kept him out for like 2 years. Whether they plug in Martin Emerson as that number 3. Safety wise, John Johnson at free safety, brought him in from the Rams. Was expecting more of an impact last year. He got lost in coverage a couple times last year. That really bothered me at free safety, especially Tyreek Hill put him on absolute ice skates in that Chiefs game, and it made me sad inside to watch him just get absolutely worked. And on the flip side, it is the perpetual question we have been asking since they drafted him back in 2019. Is Grant Delpit their safety? Thorpe Award winner at LSU, injured his first year, but he's now starting to get some play. Was not good last year. He was not a good safety. He was one of the worst. But he has to be. And you hope with actually having played a full NFL year, we're going to see the Grant Delpit that they drafted back in 20.
Where do you think the rookie DeAnthony Bell fits in out of West Florida? Is he going to get any playing time, you think?
It would surprise me. But I think
somebody I think they maybe can develop.
Yeah. I mean, especially, again, I think he'll get some playing time if Grant Delpit struggles. If Delpit struggles, they put him in. He fits in on the strong side. You've got a veteran presence over there. I mean, this is where having good corners helps you is if you have a weak back end like they do at strong safety and Delpit struggles, they can plug him in. They have some support with John Johnson. They can rotate over the top of him. They can go to more zone. That was something they did last year. Was they went to almost a 50-50 split zone man-to-man, which is not something they did 2 years ago, and it worked. They looked good defensively. The problem is they had a quarterback that couldn't stop throwing the ball to the other team, and their defense got tired.
Yeah, you talk about the 13 interceptions for Baker, who was just 6-8 on the season. Casey Keenum was the best, right? He was 2-0, won 2 games. Special teams, before we get to the win-loss game, looking at this year's upcoming schedule for the Browns.
They drafted a kicker. That always goes well. How you do? Who's the guy? Robert Aguayo. How's that going over there? How's old Rob doing? It can't be much worse. Right. I mean, Chase McLaughlin made 71% of his field goals. He was the worst kicker in the league last year. So can't be much worse. Punting, they're bringing in Corey Bjorquez out of who's in Buffalo. Good punter. Hopefully we don't have to punt that much.
Well, if you do, you need somebody that can really boom it and switch the field. And he can.
He's got a leg. Yeah.
All right, let's play the win-loss game. First of all, just looking at the schedule, how'd you feel about it as a Browns guy when the schedule popped up on release day? You know you got some tough games in there, but overall, what did you feel about the schedule?
Thanks for letting us play the Jets early.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I'll be honest. I think they could. I mean, I'm going to let you pick the games here, but I think they could win these first 4 games.
I mean, here's the thing: they did not do the Browns any favors in giving them a murderer's row once again. As they head into their bye week, they play Chargers, Pats, Ravens, Bengals. Jesus Christ! But also they have to play Tom Brady, so that sucks. But it's not It is.
But you get the Commanders on the other side too. So I mean, it's not,
Big shout out to Washington. We love you, Washington.
All right, let's go through the schedule here in our final minutes. They, by the way, the season opens on September 11th. That's going to be an emotional kind of thing. Hopefully, the NFL usually does the right thing when it comes to that kind of thing. Could be an emotional pre-games for a lot of teams starting off. They're at Charlotte. They're face the Carolina Panthers to open up the season. When you're looking at this and preparing for this has got to be a huge winnable game that you expect the Browns to win.
Yeah, again, I'm going off this assuming that Jacoby Brissett's going to be the quarterback for 8 weeks.
Yes,
I think that's what we're going off of, and I still think you look at I think in Carolina they bring back Christian McCaffrey, but I still think it's a dub. It's a very winnable game. This is not a strong team quarterback position. Big old question mark who they're going to start. Is it Sam Howell?
Get after him. You got a line that can get after a quarterback that's going to be kind of shaky back there, whoever it is.
Yeah, I think it probably Sam Howell. I think that is what we're hearing, but it might be Sam Darnold again, in which case, even better. He sees ghosts. He's going to see Myles Garrett in the backfield.
Kind of a similar thing when you talk about game 2, going up against the New York Jets just a week later. They haven't figured out the quarterback situation.
Yeah, they haven't. I mean, Zach Wilson is going to be there. I think this is a surprisingly tough game, but I think it's another win. It's a home game, first home game, opening game for the Browns, which, by the way, the interesting part about Carolina, if they can go out and win, that'll be their first opening win in 20 years. They do not win the first game of the season. So if you're marking down a game that might be a loss, it's in Carolina. But I like the Browns at home against the Jets. Even with the revamped team, the Jets had a great draft. I mean, they had a great draft. But I think it's going to be later in the year when we see that Jets, Jets really come up. By the way, you get to see their top pick, Evan Neal, go up against Myles Garrett. Good luck, big dog. Welcome to the NFL.
Yeah, that is going to be a learning lesson there in the week too. So all of a sudden the Browns are 2-0, another home game against the Steelers. I mean, you're talking about 3 straight weeks of questionable quarterbacks on the other side.
Yeah, and I like a win here too, especially because it's at home. Even though it's a rivalry game, I don't care if it's Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, or Scott Cole starting at quarterback. They're all not good.
42.
Yeah, I like it. The thing is, their wide receiving core sucks. It's Deontay Johnson and Ray McLeod. Maybe he's still there. I'm not 100% sure. They're going to run the ball a lot with
former
Najee
Clemson
Harris.
guy, so I'm okay with the Mitch.
Yeah, obviously, I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, especially with T.J. Watt on the other side, but it's at home.
10-7, 17-10 kind of game.
13-6 game is what I'm looking at. I think they can get the win at home against the Steelers.
Gets interesting. Here in week 4, they go down to Atlanta. So they play at Charlotte week 1, at Atlanta week 4. I don't know what to make of this Falcons team. To me, it's crazy. I don't want to talk about the Browns being 4-0 here, but this is, I know it's on the road, but this is another winnable game against the Falcons, who's, once again, got some questions at quarterback.
Put them at 4. Carson, what are we doing? What did they just front load this to give us Browns fans hope? I mean, another team, questions at quarterback, not really sure what's going to be going down there. Kyle Pitts is a great wide receiver. They still don't really have. I mean, it's going to be relying on a lot of rookies out there. It's a young team early. Yep. Also, one of the weaknesses of the Falcons has been perennially their offensive line, and they get to go against the Browns. Listen, could they go 3-1 to start the season? Sure, they could drop a stupid game, but I think if they're not 4-0,
you would be okay with that. I think you'd be okay sitting at 3-1. I mean, 4-0 is what you're picking, but if you slip up against the Steelers, or if you just don't look well in that opening game down at Carolina, all right.
Yeah, I think it is, especially coming off of 8-9 with 2 road games. You open up on the road. I think your most likely losses are Carolina and Pittsburgh, but I think if you're not 4-0 after the 4 weeks, you are questioning something. I think you're probably giving a lot of credence to Jacoby Brissett being quarterback, but you really want to be 4-0 when you finish it.
All right, then it gets interesting, and I'm talking real interesting. Home, and by the way, the home season ticket packages look pretty decent this year. Tasty. For Cleveland fans. Yeah. You get to face the Los Angeles Chargers, and if they're healthy on week 5, especially against an undefeated Browns team, you're in for a good ball game here. Chargers could be very powerful this year.
Give me 5-0 Cleveland Browns. No, I'm not. I'm not taking the Chargers over the Browns. Absolutely not. I love my Browns, but that Chargers team had the best offseason of anybody. They are the best team in the AFC West. I think that's a team that legit can go win 14 games. That's how good this Chargers team is built. Yeah. Justin Herbert has a chance to make himself elite this year. I think the Chargers go in. I don't think it's a beating. I think it's very similar to last year's game. 47-42 was last year's game. Expect something similar, except Jacoby Brissett's at quarterback, so 47-19.
Yeah. So going to rely a lot on the defense to keep Cleveland in this game on this one. They're going to need to force some turnovers.
100%.
So not bad. 4-1 going into week 6, and they face the New England Patriots, the Fighting Matt Joneses. But it is at home, back-to-back home games.
It is at home. This is another game where I think if they're having Deshaun Watson starting, they win. I'm going to mark this down as a loss, though, with Jacoby Brissett. I'm not the biggest Mac Jones fan. I think Mac Jones is overrated. I think he relies a lot on 4-yard checkdowns and drag routes.
He's a game manager.
That is the Bill Belichick offense. He ran it with Tom Brady a lot. But I think if they weren't starting Jacoby Brissett, I like him. I think back-to-back home losses is very possible here. If I was marking on a schedule, this is a firm toss-up for me, especially knowing that this could be a game that if they go on the low end and get appeals, that Watson could come back from this game. But I lean with Brissett at quarterback. That one's probably a loss.
Feel free, for those who are watching live here on the wherever you're watching, tweet at us or drop it in the chat. What do you think Cleveland is going this season? Where do you think they're going to trip up? What are some of their best games that they're going to have? And I think this is a huge game for them in week 7 here. They go on the road to the Ravens, the team they were very similar matched up with a season ago. You have kind of put it out there on the table that maybe Lamar Jackson isn't what he's cracked up to be. Now with
Scott, I said he sucks. I said he sucks is what I said.
Yeah, pretty much. And they have not made any moves as of this date. We don't put the date out there. It's the last day of May. Talking about early preview as we go through these 32 teams. And certainly we can circle back at any point with things changing. This is a big game for them on the road, considering that you're sitting there and you're thinking they're going to be 4-2 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that, again, I would put a coin on as a toss-up. This is especially with Jacoby Brissett starting. Realistically, I think it is probably a loss. They struggle going to Baltimore. They have always struggled playing at M&T Bank Stadium. It is, in my estimation, one of the hardest places to go win a game. Yep. I know a lot of people talk about a lot of other stadiums. M&T Bank Stadium is as tough as it gets. But this one is about as 50-50 for me as it gets. Let's not forget, last year they played the Ravens in Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson threw 4 picks on 5 drives. He was awful. They don't have any wide receivers. This is a game that if they're going to win, they're going to win it with defense. They're going to win it with their running game. I will mark it down as a loss right now as a realistic play, but this is one that I think if they're going to win one, this to me could be a fulcrum point in the season. If they go out and win in Baltimore, this is a team that's now thinking playoffs, not just hoping for playoffs.
And then hopefully the final game that they don't have Deshaun Watson, Monday nighter, October 31st, right around Halloween, you face the AFC champs, Cincinnati Bengals, who's got a great defense, and we know they got a top 10 quarterback when you talk about Burrow. This is probably maybe the last game we'll see Jacoby Brissett. But let's just say it's week 8, final game with Jacoby Brissett. What do you got here going up against the Bengals?
Again, another game that I think is a toss-up, and I know a lot of people will say that's my Browns homerdom, but let's be clear. This is a Browns team that went out and beat the Cincinnati Bengals twice last year. Once was Week 18. We do understand Week 18, nobody played. But they not only beat them in Week 6, they beat the pants off of them. They beat them by 30 points. And let's be clear, what was the Bengals' biggest weakness last year? Joe Burrow got murdered in the backfield. He's the most sacked quarterback in the league. I'm putting the Browns down for a win at home against the Bengals here. I think this is it's Brissett's last game. There's going to be a lot of hope around Deshaun Watson coming back. They're heading into their bye week. Yeah. I think this is a game that this team is a team. The two weaknesses of the Bengals were always offensive line and run defense. And the Browns are a team that can run the ball, and they're a team that gets after the quarterback. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a fun game, and I know everybody's going to say I'm crazy, but I think they are more likely to win that game at home against the Bengals than on the road against the Ravens.
But if you have Patriots, Ravens, Bengals as toss-up games, 2 of 3 out of that, is probably not a bad thing. So going into the bye week, as a Browns fan, you're sitting there at 5-3. Are you happy at that point, looking at the schedule, saying, "Oh, we're 5-3"? Okay.
If you're 4-4 going into that bye week, you're thrilled.
Okay.
With Jacoby Brissett as starter, if you can get there at 500, I think you're really, really happy knowing you're getting your quarterback back after the bye week.
Just for fun, say Deshaun Watson starts those first 8 games. What record do you have?
6-2.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. 6-2.
I still don't think they beat the Chargers.
They don't
I think
beat
the Chargers are just
no
buck wild. And I think you probably drop one: Baltimore, Cincinnati, New England. One of those 3 you're dropping.
Just because that's a tough
stretch.
Those are 3 physical games. Not to say that the Cleveland can't be physical, because I think they are a very physical team. So you got a bye week. So are we assuming now week 10 at Miami, Deshaun Watson is a starter?
I am. That is the assumption. Yeah. I think the schedule just lines up nicely for that as well. Yeah. The NFL likes that sort of suspension where it's like, oh, they're coming back after a bye week. It's not like in a weird middle of the schedule thing. He comes back after the bye week. They go to Miami. That's the first game, which is a little weird because you do wonder, Jacoby Brissett, former Miami Dolphin, it would have made sense if they go getting like 10 games or whatever. But assuming Deshaun Watson's back, they go to Miami. I think they exactly
beat the Dolphins.
I think they go to Miami and they beat the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are, I think it's a good team. Don't get me wrong. I think a team that is going to be relying on Tua taking the next step forward. But I think with Deshaun Watson, the Browns go to Miami and handle the Dolphins.
Well, that makes up for a very interesting matchup in Week 11. It's on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. Deshaun Watson versus Josh Allen. It's in Buffalo. I'll just throw it out there. I think you guys get beat by 3 touchdowns in this game.
I lean towards, I think Buffalo wins that game. It's tough going to New Era and win games. I will say it helps that it's in November, not December, but it's still going to be awful weather. I think actually if the weather is bad, it benefits Cleveland more because they can run the ball with running backs more. Buffalo still doesn't really have running backs. They drafted one, but they still don't have a running back, and it's still a question mark. But I think assuming the weather is decent, I think Josh Allen, comes out on top. I just don't bet against Josh Allen. Thanks, man. He's really good.
Top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league.
Do they go up against anybody good in the next game? Like after they play Josh Allen? Like who do they play after that? Some nobody?
Some guy named Thomas Brady. I think he's out of a small Michigan school.
Yeah.
But that's at home. Does that change anything for you? So right now you're sitting at, what do we got him? So we got him through 10 games here.
6-4.
Sitting at 6-4, hosting Tampa in November.
If assuming Deshaun Watson is playing, the Browns will be 7-4 after that Tampa Bay game. I like Tom Brady a lot. They get a home game against him, a team that is match like the Browns. The Buccaneers last year were not an explosive offensive team. They had moments. Mike Evans is no doubt a great wide receiver, but listen, this is a team that, it's still Tom Brady out there. He's not chucking the ball 50 yards downfield. That's where the Browns struggle the most was deep pass coverage. There's a team who's playing running back right now. Leonard Fournette, maybe, question mark, is he still what he is? He's banged up at the end of last year. I think the Browns, if Deshaun Watson's playing and they are fully healthy, I think the Browns beat the Buccaneers at home. I think that is a very winnable game for them.
I mean, you're talking about sitting at 7-4.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, that's only won 8 games last year. December 4th versus the Texans. Can you believe it? Deshaun Watson going back to Houston, which is going to be a scene. But here's the deal. Houston can't back it up. It doesn't matter. I mean, they could pack out the stadium. It could be rowdy. Deshaun Watson can feel really uncomfortable, but you're probably going to win by 4 touchdowns.
Scott, I've said I thought Davis Mills played really well last year. They still have Brandon Cooks out there. I think the line for this game is going to be somewhere around Browns minus 17.5. And I think the Browns cover that by at least double. I think this screams 42-0 game. That Watson is going to be motivated to go and beat the pants off his old team. Like, he is going to destroy the Houston Texans. Sorry, Houston. Sorry. I feel bad for you. But like,
even if we're still in Jacoby Brissett world, they win by 10.
Facts. And it's in Houston anyway, so Deshaun's going to want to put up a show against the fans. Like, he's just going to beat the pants off them.
It'd be interesting. That kind of feels like an NFL kind of thing to do, that they would suspend him through that game.
Through that game? Yeah. I mean, again, in which case, you play that game. If he doesn't come back till December 11th, which would be a 12-game suspension, the Browns, instead of sitting there after week 13 at, what do we have them?
You're talking about them being 8-4 at this point.
8-4. I think they are probably instead of 8-4,
6-6 or 5-7 or
6. I would say 5-7 probably. I don't think they win any of those Buffalo, Tampa, Miami games without
no.
without Watson.
Tough game on December 11th. You head to Cincinnati. You're saying they beat them twice last year. You're saying maybe they beat them on Monday Night Football. I firmly believe Cincinnati wins that game on October 31st on Monday night. Tough road game. The good thing is the nice thing is you get kind of the bye week for Houston, but then you got to go to Cincinnati the next week.
Yeah, I think that's the game that the Bengals do take down the Browns. I think home game, especially late in the year where these two teams are going to be battling out for the top of the division. This series screams split to me. I think they each win at home. Could I see it inverted? Yeah. Could I see Cincinnati?
This would be a huge.
Football?
I mean, if they had beat them early in the season, this would be a huge game for both teams at this point.
Yeah,
I think it's the biggest game on the schedule. To be honest with you, it's week 14.
Without a doubt. I think without a doubt. I think especially if you're looking at these two teams as favorites in the division, without a doubt, these are going to be the toughest games. I just don't think you beat Joe Burrow twice, assuming everything stays as it is and there's no major injuries. I think the Bengals nip him at home. Even with Deshaun Watson, I think that is a brutal game.
I think you got two winnable games coming up here in 15 and 16. December 18th, so no bye weeks in here. You're on a roll here against Texans, Bengals. Then you got Baltimore Ravens and New Orleans Saints at home.
Yeah.
I think they'll beat the Ravens here. I think the Saints game, I haven't figured out the Saints. I think we're going to have to watch them to figure out what they got.
Yeah, I think Baltimore, I don't think they beat them. I think they destroy them. I think they beat the Ravens by 21 points. That's how much better I think they are with Deshaun Watson. And Lamar Jackson has not played well against the Browns a whole lot. Like he has had struggles with their defense. And I think they beat New Orleans at home. Again, that is more of a feel game. We'll see what is going on down there with Jameis. They, of course, got a great wide receiving core. If Michael Thomas comes back, they've got Michael Thomas and Chris Olave out there. Like, they are basically Ohio State Campus South, and I feel bad rooting against them, but the Browns will beat Jameis Winston because he will throw 5 picks.
He might throw 5 touchdowns, too, in that game, but yeah.
It's true.
It's kind of the weird thing he does.
Take the over in that game. That's all I'm saying. Take the over.
Football, by the way, that's one of those that's Christmas weekend. So you're going to see some
Christmas Eve
games. You're going to see some Christmas games, which lines up for the NFL on New Year's Day. I hate when the NFL trumps college football.
Don't take away from it.
I hate when the schedule lines up this way. Yeah. But this is going to be a big game for them. And it could, depending on the way the schedule works out, this is a game that you expect them to win going to D.C., facing the Commanders in Week 17. Last year we talked about that MERS row that kind of ended their season with, losing 3 of the last 4. These 4 games this year, I think, are all winnable.
Yeah.
Which could be the difference between being in the playoffs for the first time in a while and watching.
Yeah, you've heard of a murderer's row. This is a confectioner's row because it looks sweet going down the stretch. I love this game in Washington. By the way, I think there's about a 50-50 shot by the time we get to that game in Washington. Dan Snyder is no longer the owner of the Washington Commanders. Wow. There's a vote going out right now, and there's a lot of momentum to get him out of there. Nonetheless, they're starting Carson Wentz at quarterback. Give me the Browns.
I'll have to follow that story. This could be a weird season for the Commanders under their new title. Week 18. Steelers. A little rival game to close out the season on January 8th. Do you feel like that game's going to matter? Or do you think at that point that the Browns have actually, what you're talking about a playoff team?
I think they're in the playoffs at this point. I think they're probably playing not a lot of their starters in this game. It's a gift from the NFL scheduling gods to put Pittsburgh as the last game because I don't think Pittsburgh's going to – if Pittsburgh is good this year, give Mike Tomlin Coach of the Year award because he has no quarterbacks
have a
or
good
wide
running
receivers.
game.
And he
I can tell you that. They got a good running game in Pittsburgh. I think they got one of the better guys in the league.
And TJ Watt's good. But, I think at the end of the day, you're looking at this game probably not mattering. I will pencil this down as a toss-up just because who knows who plays in that game. I will still put the Browns down for a win against the Steelers because I think even if the Steelers start all their starters, the Browns backups are better than who they have out there. Let's be clear. As it stands right now, they'd be playing Jacoby Brissett, who has played 8 games. And their running back is probably D'Ernest Johnson, who is a guy who has 2 100-yard games under his belt, and that's their offense. I don't care who they're playing at wide receiver. I still like them, but that's a toss-up just because of.
So you're talking about
the Browns beat the Bengals.
You're talking about a team that's going to be here in this 11 or 12 win season, is what you're talking about. So what's the floor? So what do you think the minimum games they win, and what's the maximum?
I think that the floor is the interesting talk. I think their floor is probably 6 games if Deshaun Watson does not play the entire year. I think they're a 6-win team. Maybe a little more. They can mitigate some of that. I think being a heavy running team can make up for having a bad quarterback. You're going to play close
games, right? You're going to have some close games with the running game and Brissett.
And they do get the benefit of having teams like LA, like New England at home, Tampa Bay at home, New Orleans at home. Yeah. But I think their floor is probably 6, maybe 7, because I don't think the division is as good as people think it is. I think Baltimore's not very good, and I think Pittsburgh's bad. I think their ceiling is probably you're looking at 13 wins, maybe 12 if we're being a conservative ceiling. There's a lot of toss-up games out there. There's a Scott, with this team, let's say Deshaun Watson gets suspended for 4 games. Let's say it's the 4-game number. They still may go 4-0 and get him back for every division game, and they may sweep the division. That's how good Deshaun Watson is. And don't forget, he has a number 1 wide receiver with Amari Cooper. He has a top running game. He's never had a running game. If it's on the 4 side, I think you're ceiling. Yeah, I think if you're on the pessimistic side where he is suspended the whole season, you're looking at a 6-win team. I think if he plays any more than, if he's suspended for 4 games or less, you're looking at 12 to 13. I think 13 is your ceiling. I still don't think they beat the Chargers.
That's a big swing. But I'm telling you, that's the difference that having a real quarterback and not having a real quarterback makes in this league. It is literally a 7 or 8 game swing. And this is if it's a 4-game suspension, you could talk about the Cleveland Browns winning the division over a team that went to the Super Bowl a year ago. Also, I'm not sure how much I can buy into the Bengals' just crazy run they had last year. I think it's going to be a telling season for Joe Burrow. But you talked about some key things in here. Steelers, no Big Ben. It's going to be kind of a rebuilding kind of thing for the Steelers. When you look at the other teams in the division, it's possible, right? It's possible that you talk about the Ravens really taking a dump. The Ravens could be a 3 or 4 win team. They still have a good defense, and I still think they have a good quarterback that can win you some games. I just don't know who else it is, right? It's going to be a lot of unsung heroes. I can't wait to get to the Ravens. Next week, we will come back in here, and we will talk about those Cincinnati Bengals. Gators in the chat thinks the Ravens are going to be scary this year, in a good way.
Scary bad.
I think it's going to be
Who's
scary.
their wide receiver? Devin Duvernay's the top wide receiver. Yeah. I don't care.
They're going to have to make some moves. The good news is, if you're a Ravens fan, there is some time to make some moves. And you got a mobile quarterback. Mobile quarterbacks can make guys that are bad route runners be able to work their way open. But
true.
They might be bringing at the Heisman package. It might be Wildcats and all kind of stuff going down on a Ravens team. Who've been kind of quiet. So we'll break down the Bengals next week, Steelers, and then the Ravens. And I think I just listed those teams out, but that might be how this division ends. It might be Browns, Bengals, Steelers, Ravens there in the AFC North. What's your final thoughts here on this Cleveland Browns?
Could not be less excited for a season because I don't know if I can root for them. But they could be a division winner. They could be awful with a horrible person at quarterback. Who knows? Welcome to Cleveland.
Make sure you guys hit those subscribe buttons, those follow buttons. Follow Nick Mizesko out on Twitters and all the social medias. I'm Scott Cole Show, and we will be back next week. Cannot wait for the season to get here. We're kind of doing once a week right now because there's only a certain amount of football that you can talk about as we move on. But we're going to be breaking down a lot of NFL, a lot of college football. Those go hand in hand at times, and we're going to be busy heading into
we'll be breaking down every conference in Division I and 1A football and 1AA and Division II. Go Mount Union.
I'm getting into the Southern Conference. I'll tell you about Furman and all the other Wofford and all these other schools.
What's Grambling doing this year?
But cannot wait. We'll be back next week. We will break down the 2022 last year's defending AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, and I'll see if I can get my guy DJ Reader to at least drop me a quote or so. I know those guys are very busy right now. He's probably somewhere fun and warm and beautiful. Well, Nick, it's up in his old stomping grounds in Detroit. I'm still here in Dallas. Are you back? Are you back in the home state next week? Are you in the home studio there in Arizona?
We're back home again in Arizona. That's not the song, but we're back at AZ for the summer. So just when it gets 110, I've decided to stay home the whole time. So good decisions made by all.
If you missed it, watch it back. If you haven't, we got tons of VOD. We got tons of audio content out there wherever you listen to. You can see up at top here. Subscribe to our audio podcast. That's where a majority of our folks listen out there. And we'd love to, if you got some thoughts on the Browns, you got thoughts on the Bengals, AFC North, you cannot wait for the next team or your team to get shown up, let us know. Hit us up on social media. We'd love to talk about it. For Scott Cole, Nick Mizesko, we'll see you next week to break down some more football right here on the show.